Last but not least, we have Death Rattle Demon Hunter, a deck that got a slight buff with Razorboar going to a 3-2, but has only gotten better and better. Now you have Mutanus, which is a Murloc which could work with N'Zoth. The fact that N'Zoth was buffed to 9 mana means you can N'Zoth and Hero Power turn 10 and attack again with the Illidari Inquisitor. You also run a couple of the new cards, being the Archdruid Neuralix, I don't know how to say his name, I apologize, but the Archdruid, which allows you to generate some dream cards, the Fell Rattler for some rush, and again, some of the already previously buffed cards. I think that this deck has the potential to be a top 5 deck as of right now. Do I think that it will be in the long run? As other things get optimized, not so much. But I do think that there's potential here. This is definitely going to be a tier 2 deck after all the dust settles. And, yeah, this is going to be definitely a tier 2 deck, if not even a tier 1 deck, because it's just got good draw, because obviously you have Tusk Piercer, good resource generation because of the Razor Boar, and the Razor Fen Beastmaster to pull minions into your, onto the board from your hand, Skull Gul'dan and Death Speaker to thin out your deck a little bit, Talon to draw you N'Zoth guaranteed. Basically, this deck has got everything you could want in a mid-range deck. It's got draw, damage, early game, mid-game and late game, everything. It's super strong. I would highly recommend it, and I left the best for last because this is the deck that I personally had the most fun with, although Control Warrior and Priest were both very good as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. So if you want the best decks to climb with the new mini set, you came to the right place. Now I'd just like to start off by saying that I'm not including decks like Face Hunter, because Face Hunter is the highest win rate deck in the game right now. However, it really didn't change at all. And other decks like that, you know, like Secret or Miracle Rogue, along with most Paladin decks, because even though they have dropped off a little bit, they're still very, very strong. I want to talk about decks that were changed that I think are good to jump on now, so that way you could get ahead of the meta before it ends up changing. So first we have Control Warrior. Control Warrior is good because it does well against a lot of the aggro decks out there right now. It does well against Face Hunter. It does well against Aggro Shaman. It does well against Paladin and Miracle Rogue because you're not going to get bursted and you have a ton of armor. This deck does lose to Priest and Warlock because you're not really proactive, which means that come late game, you will probably end up losing out on value. But overall, I think that this is a very, very powerful deck nonetheless. And this deck's idea is to generally go for fatigue. However, you could run a N'Zoth version, which I haven't tried out yet, but I'm going to soon, that basically says, hey, we're going to have some proactive win conditions, right? We're going to have N'Zoth, we're going to have Ysera, we're going to have Kresh, and I might try to throw in the 7-mana card that resummons some Frenzy minions so we can get even more Kreshes and more armor. And so overall, I think that this deck is quite solid. It's got good late game, good control for the early and mid game, and yeah, you're probably never going to lose to any of those pure aggro decks because you just have too much armor. So the next deck on this list is something that's a little bit surprising to me, and it's Aggro Shaman. I think Aggro Shaman is surprisingly good. If you look at the win rate here, it is the second highest win rate deck in the game from Diamond through Legend over the past day, for this expansion anyway, and it's been really, really good. Like, I didn't realize how important draw, well I did, but I didn't realize how much of an impact one extra draw card would have on Aggro Shaman, and then one other card that could consistently get you out Doomhammer, you know, on the off chance that you didn't get it already. So this card uses a couple of the new cards, the Primal Dungeoneer and the Selfless Sidekick, and overall, it ends up to make a pretty good deck. Obviously, you're running the Doomhammer Rockbiter weapon combo, sometimes with Stormstrike. You can make copies of these weapons with, or spells with the Diligent Note Taker to do more burst over a couple of turns. But you also have the Wailing Vapor and the Cage Match Custodian, Wand Maker, and Marsh Spawn and Primal Dungeoneer for some earlier game tempo before you get to that burst. Basically, this deck has it all now. You've got a little bit of draw that guarantees your win condition draw every time, Doomhammer. You have some good burst damage with the Portal and the Lightning Bolt if you need a little bit of damage late game. And you have a couple of alternate win conditions with Instructor Fireheart, potentially making Speaker Gidra really big, and Nara being a backup for Doomhammer if you don't end up drawing it. Honestly, this deck has everything you could need in a deck, now that it has draw especially, so I'd give it a try if you haven't already. It only really needs 1 or 2 legendaries. You don't even need a Nara or Gidra, or Fireheart. You could probably just try to run some extra burst damage if you haven't already. Just go through the list. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but maybe, you know, like a Guidance, or something that will get you damage, obviously. So Control Priest is just pretty nuts. I think that it is one of the strongest decks in the game. Yes, it will lose to Warlock. People will, in the comments, I can already tell, they're going to be like, oh, but it loses to Warlock. Yes, this deck loses to Warlock. Warlock beats super slow control decks. Warlock will destroy Warrior as well, and any other control decks that come into the meta. However, this deck is able to generate a ton of value. You have Draconic Studies, Renew, Wandmaker, Palm Reading, Venomous Scorpid, South Sea Scoundrel that can all generate resources and be very, very flexible. Not to mention the fact that Raised Dead can get you back some of those minions so you can generate more cards. You also have really good removal with Hysteria, Zarilla with some of those healing spells, Against All Odds with Wave of Apathy, and Soul Mirror, and again, whatever you end up discovering off of the numerous spells they're going to generate. You can also steal a minion with Cabal Acolyte and the Wave of Apathy, which is essentially destroying a minion for your opponent as well, which is kind of cool. So yeah, overall, this deck is quite fantastic. I think that this deck could still be optimized in some ways, but as of right now, I think this is one of the best put together, well-rounded decks of the new mini set. And obviously, it's only the first day, but I do think that this has a lot of potential. So if you want to try this deck out, I would try it out. So yeah, let's jump into the next one. Next, we have Control Warlock. It's a deck that I've said a couple of times already, because it will be Control Warrior and Control Priest. And I actually think that this deck has a lot of potential. Will it lose to hard aggro decks like Face Hunter? The answer is yes. There's nothing that you can do to change that. Unless you get like a really good hand, you're able to clear the board really well with like Soul Shear. You get a good Minari Mosher off. So there are still a couple of ways that you can win theoretically, but most likely you are going to lose to the pure aggro decks. However, based on what we've seen played from this new mini set, the mini set seems to be more mid-range focused and control focused. Obviously, it's only been 2 days at this point, but it does look like the meta is shifting that way a little bit. And because of that, I think Control Warlock is going to really shine. I've had great success with it. I'm 3-0 with it. It's small sample size, but even before that, my Control Warlock had a 60% win rate before the mini set, even when the meta was super duper fast. So I have a lot of high hopes for this deck. You could potentially run a couple of different cards to get a little bit more healing if you want. Say get rid of Vol'jin and Mutanus, because they're not super needed, they're just there for hand interaction, and maybe go for another Minari Mosher or something else that could potentially heal you or give you more soul fragments or something like that. Obviously, we're still working on the deck, everything is in the prototype phase right now, but I think that this has a lot of potential.